Welcome to episode 170 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today I'm joined by Sue Donaldson. She's a speaker, author, and longtime advocate for something we all need more of, especially as we get older, that being genuine connection through hospitality. Sue didn't set out to build a big career. In fact, she simply wanted to serve God and use the gifts she had. Over time, that led her from teaching English to living abroad, speaking and writing, and eventually encouraging others to open their homes and their hearts to people who may feel alone. In this conversation, you'll hear several key takeaways. First, Sue reminds us that hospitality is not about having the perfect home or the perfect meal. It's about making people feel seen, welcomed, and valued. Second, she explains how something as simple as asking thoughtful questions can transform relationships. People want to feel heard, and sometimes one good question can open the door to a very meaningful connection. Third, we talk about loneliness, especially among seasoned citizens, and how reaching out to others often ends up blessing us as much as the people we invite. Finally, Sue shares how our gifts can evolve over time. What we're called to do after turning 50 may look very different from what we did earlier in life, but it can be just as impactful, if not more so. This is a warm and encouraging conversation that will likely get you thinking about how you can create more connection in your own life. To tell us more about her story, please welcome Sue Donaldson to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Sue. I really appreciate the time. How did you get interested in this kind of stuff that you're doing? It's just all of the Bible translations and the writing?
I'm not really a Bible translator, but I can tell you that story. I don't know if you're familiar with Wycliffe Bible translators, but when I first heard about them, I was probably in high school or college. And I was fascinated with them because they're not the typical missionary where you go in and plant a church and evangelize people and stay in the same village for 25 years or whatever. They are half of the organization are linguists, so they're kind of having an engineer brain. And I was an English major, so I'm not into that at all. But I love what they do because they go into locations where they don't have the written language of the Bible. So they don't have a written language at all. So they have to listen to the language. They have to write it down linguistically with the international alphabet, and then they start translating the Bible. So it is a long process, but computers and everything, it's a lot quicker. And so they get the people in the village to do it with them, and they pay them. It's like their job. And so then they become to know the Lord just by reading the scripture. And they do the New Testament, maybe a book or two of the Old, and then they just let them plant their own church, and then they go on to another language group. But anyway, I had heard about them, thought it was fascinating, knew I was not the linguist type, but I was a high school English teacher, and they have missionary kids schools. So I applied, and they put me actually in an international school in Brazil. And so there were only some missionary kids there, but it was a very expensive school. So I could teach there for free. And 7 of the Wycliffe kids could attend for $250 a year instead of $5,000 a year. So that was one of my many adventures when I was single, because I didn't get married till I was 35. Praise God.
That's very cool. And I owe my entire career to my high school English teacher, Mr. Larson, in 11th grade. Yep. He saw something in me I did not know existed. I struggled with English all the time, and he met with me for days, actually weeks. During his study, all his planning hour coincided with my study hall. So I was able to meet with him in his little cubbyhole office under the stairs of the B Wing at La Follette High School in Madison, Wisconsin. And he grilled me on grammar. And I remember the day that it all came together, and I could identify what a noun was and a verb was. And I spent the rest of the day reading my textbooks, identifying, I know that's a noun, I know that's a verb and an adjective. Then he said, great, now that we mastered that, we're going to go into creative writing. And he introduced me to a thesaurus. So everything I owe my career to him.
And did you ever get a chance to tell him that?
I did. Absolutely. I just was put on my heart to send him a note. And I did, and he used the note to apply for a scholarship to get some sort of award money that allowed him to travel and attend a conference somewhere. And he died of brain cancer a few years later. So that was very sad, but I'm glad I had the opportunity to thank him.
And there are so many times that we are prompted to write that note.
Yes.
Or send a text nowadays is so easy. And we go, I'll do it tomorrow. And then it's too late. And we don't want to live with regret. Praise God that you remember to do that.
Exactly. That's right. So what made you go into English as a career?
I'm back at the time. I'm 70. By the time I'm 73. I will be when this comes out too. And back in the day, I didn't think about having some big career. I went to college to marry a pastor, but no pastor asked me that I was interested in. And so I thought I could be a nurse or a teacher. Those were the options. Whereas my kids all have big careers. I have 3 girls, but it was just different. It was a different mindset. So I knew I didn't want to be a nurse because I faint at the sight of blood. I am married to a doctor, but I don't go to his office with him. But so I thought, I think I love my English teacher. That's why. And because of that, I wanted to be an English teacher. And so I got my credential. I applied to 2 mission boards. They both said, you need to teach in the States first because teaching is very challenging. And I had no idea, but it is. And living abroad is very challenging. So they didn't want teachers to just burn out first few months. They are very smart. Both mission boards said that. So I waited 4 years. I taught 4 years at a Christian high school in Southern California. Loved it, but still wanted something more. And God provided this opportunity to live in Brazil for a couple of years with Wycliffe. Came back, started a master's degree in HR, human resources. I did finally finish it, though I don't remember what to do with it anymore because I started having children shortly. But I just knew I wanted to serve God full time. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what you do. You just say, Lord, here I am. And also he gives us certain gifts. Like you didn't know you had that affinity for language until your teacher helped you. Mm-hmm. And then it just expanded. But God did give you that, Greg. So you know that.
Yes.
And so God has given me an opportunity to speak and write. And I just love doing it.
That's neat. And so you've published a bunch of books. It looks like at least 5.
Only 5. I'm working on a 6th, but who knows?
Okay. Very good. Tell us about your most recent book. That is Never Alone. Mm-hmm.
My favorite. And I speak and write a lot on hospitality, but not like the Martha Stewart type or Pinterest. More when we open our homes, we give an opportunity for the world to see God's welcoming heart. So that's why my website is called welcomeheart.com. So whenever we have someone over, even if it's for a glass of water or a cup of coffee, they might meet God at your table because they've never been welcomed by God before for whatever reason. And so that's been my passion I've been speaking on hospitality for about 30 years. So I have written books on God's hospitality and Bible studies and conversation starters and mentoring. But a couple years ago, I was trying to figure out what to write next. And I was with my oldest daughter on vacation. We met in Iowa. She's in New York. She works in Manhattan. I am on the coast of California. So we're meeting in Iowa at relatives' house. And I said, Bonnie, would you please read what your dear mom has come up with for another book? Because she really is our best writer. She's the smartest writer, best writer in the family. And so she was reading it on my phone, Greg, and I wore sunglasses. We were outside. It was so hot in August in Iowa. And I thought, I don't want to cry because she can be very direct like me, but she gets it from me. And so she's reading my writing on my phone, and I don't know if this is on video or not, but she's like scrolling so fast. I thought, I know she's smart, but she cannot be reading it. But anyway, so she does this for a little bit, and then she goes, Mom, is this a Bible study? That was like something terrible. I go, no, it's not a Bible study, but I want people that I love and know who are my friends who don't know God. I want to give them some context. So then she just was silent, and then she just kept going like this, scrolling with her finger. And then she stopped and she said, Mom, you need to choose 12 of your most compelling stories and put the Bible in it. And then that was it. That was the only advice that she was done. And I was on a road trip. My husband likes to go road trips. So we had a long drive back to California, and I had a notebook, and I started brainstorming because my daughters have heard me speak, and that made me feel good. At least she thought I was compelling. Maybe not when we're at home, but in the speaking mode. She's heard my stories, and they're fun, hopefully funny and also captivating because they reflect on who God is. That's why. And so I just brainstormed 28 stories. And by the time the book came out, which was November, it's 24 stories, and they're all about real life people I know. Some I got permission from. or changed their names, but about opportunities of people instances when people felt alone, either bereft by other people or bereft by God. And then how they don't have to be by reaching out and inviting other people into their life. So it's been a lot of work since you're a writer, but also some great responses. People are doing it as a Bible study, which I should tell my daughter, guess what? They're doing it as a Bible study. So there. But it's not a Bible study, but there is an attribute of God for each chapter.
I like something that I saw on your website. If God wanted us all alone, he would have given us each our own planet. That is correct. It's sad to see seasoned citizens stay in that cocoon that they built, and they don't go out and they don't mingle with other people. They don't make new friends. Their friends die and move away, and pretty soon they're isolated, maybe not by choice, but by circumstance.
And I have to tell you, when I speak to moms group, they kind of look, they say, I wish I did have my own planet because they're so tired of being around their children. But as far as your audience and my friends as well, we can get in our cocoon, and we also think we can't learn a new thing, but we can learn a new thing. And if that's only having one person over, it will. I like to say this too, that I've learned this, that I have done hospitality because I've been lonely. And so I call it self-serving sanctification, because hospitality is a command. It's not just a choice if you're a believer. And so if you follow God's command, he will enable you to do it because he's commanded it. But it does your heart so much good. But I have found that often the person I invite, they might be the lonely person, but you're the one who gets blessed, or they're the one who gets blessed. And also I've invited groups of people, and maybe only one or two could come, and they're the ones who needed it the most.
It's amazing how that happens. I remember talking to somebody a couple of years ago who had heard one of my podcasts and wanted some advice on what she could do with her life. We talked about the things she liked to do, and come to find out she loved to cook for people. When her husband was alive, they'd do these dinner parties and she would cook and all of that. I'm like, you can still do that now that your husband has passed. In fact, that is great. Invite the single people from your church, the older people who don't get out and don't have a lot of friends. Invite them over and prepare them a meal and just introduce them to each other. Have a great evening of conversation. And she loved that idea.
And it gave her a lease on life. I just was thinking about, are you familiar with My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers? Mm-hmm. And I just read his biography for the third time because I was being interviewed on somebody else's podcast about a spiritual giant. And he died at 43. So he didn't get to be after 40, after 50. He would not be on your podcast. But he died at 43 of appendicitis in World War I. So back in the day, they didn't have everything that they have now. But he had been a speaker and a teacher and a Bible preacher for years. And his wife was a stenographer. She knew how to do shorthand for 250 words a minute, which was quite fast. When she was young, this is how God worked it all out. When she was younger, like in her teens, they had to pull, this is back in England, okay, in the early 1900s. She was sickly, so they pulled her out of school, and she was very depressed about that because she couldn't go to school. But she decided she would like to learn stenography, and so she learned shorthand so she would have a purpose. See how it's just what you were just talking about.
Right.
And when she was 16, she goes, I'm going to be the prime minister's secretary. So it was so cute. When she's 16, she had this dream. She ended up marrying Oswald, who was 9 years her senior. And she would take notes on all his trainings and preaching and messages. And then he died so young. And now we have over 40 books by Oswald Chambers because of his wife's gift for stenography.
That's just, it gives me the Christ bumps up and down my arms because you see that kind of thing happen all the time. That is amazing.
And Sunday was Easter, and I had 19 people over, and there were about 5 singles, some old, some new, some divorced, now remarried. And the whole idea is to invite the single person because they don't get to be part of a family.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And hospitality is something that everybody can do. And you do not have to make a big dinner for everybody. I know a woman, I've talked about this on the podcast many times, who invites teenage girls over to her house for snacks and puzzles. And they just put together puzzles and have some amazing conversations through that kind of time together.
I love to thrift shop, and I just bought a single Primus burner for making s'mores on your dining room table. And I practiced doing it for dessert we have a university in town. So we adopt a college student every year or every 4 years. We get them for all. So she's recently engaged and she's gluten-free. So I had to go to Target to find gluten-free graham crackers, and we made s'mores for dessert. And we didn't burn down the house. So that was my practice. And now since then, I've had moms with their young children, and we're watching very carefully. So we do s'mores at my house with these young children, and it's just such a blast.
I agree. What a great opportunity to make her feel at home.
Yes.
And because they lose all their support to come to college as a general rule. And then a great opportunity for you to share your mentoring skills with another quasi-daughter.
It's so great. And I remember having one of our college students for dinner years ago, and my oldest was at USC. And she called in the middle of dinner. I said, Bonnie, we can't talk because I have our college student for dinner. And she got so sad because 4 years at USC, no one invited her for dinner. Not one family.
And she went to this. Wow.
Yeah. This is such a missed opportunity. You don't know, because the older person might think, hey, is a cool college kid. They dress very cool. They're very smart. They know all this internet stuff. And they don't want to spend time with me. Are you kidding?
I've heard the opposite. Yeah. That people are loving that kind of intergenerational connection because they don't get access to their own grandparents.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. Many of them grow up without even having contact with their grandparents. So this is a great opportunity for us to have that connection and share our wisdom and experience and knowledge and humor with them. And they can influence us on what's happening with their generation. Everybody wins. Absolutely.
Everybody wins. And one reason people like our church is because we're a mixed generational church. And I asked the college pastor once, I go, could I have your leadership team for dinner? And then you could just, Mark and I'll go upstairs and you can have your meeting while you're downstairs. And so he goes, okay, how about Sunday? I go, okay. And I said, how about allergies? Oh yeah, tons of allergies. So there went my lasagna crockpot recipe out the window. It was quite a challenge. And then I said, well, how many do you have? I was thinking like 8. Oh, we have 24 leaders. I said, and visiting Wycliffe missionaries that week. They all come in the house at once. They all go, can I help you? Get out of the kitchen. So it was a lot of work, and I've done it about 6 times now through the years, but such a blessing.
All of your books appear to be focused on hospitality. Do you help people to figure out a way to be more hospitable to people? Is that it?
I would say when I speak, it's more of a workshop, so I give tips.
Okay.
I was just on Kathy Lipp's Clutter-Free Academy digital conference, and they want practical tips. And so I just gave them funny ones, like do hospitality at night and only light candles and you don't have to dust. I thought, that's good because I don't dust. But an older lady gave me that tip to do things in advance. I have a Facebook group. It's a hospitality Facebook group. So if your audience is on Facebook, they can come join it. It's called Welcome Heart, Welcome Home. We have about 700 members, and we talk about how to use a good tuna casserole or why we don't do hospitality when we don't. The women there are some men in it, but they rarely make comments. But we just encourage each other to have people over.
One of your books is called Say Something Special, and you provide 252 conversation starters in that. And I think that's what holds people back from inviting people over, because that was certainly the case with my mother. I don't know what to talk about. They are so much better than me. What could I offer to this conversation? And what are some of the conversation starters that anybody can do? Pretty well.
Oh, listen, I was asked by I have a mentor, and she said, Sue, you need to write a book. They owned the Christian bookstore back in the day, and to sell at the register. And it never came about to anything at the time. But later I thought, you know what? People feel loved when they get asked questions.
Exactly.
And this all started, my brother, he was at a party and he goes, Sue, it was so boring. And so here at the dinner table, I just took it upon myself to ask everybody, and here's a question, and it's in my book. Where were you living when you were 10, and what were you doing? And he just took over the whole party. There's 10 people at the table, and he goes, and I'll start. He goes, I was living in Milwaukee. I had a paper route with my brother, and everybody went around. So see, if you start the answer, 2 things, Greg, you model brevity, which we're not known for at this age. And you model vulnerability. So how vulnerable are you going to be in the answer? So Hyatt said, So we went all the way around. There was giggles, there was humor, there was networking. Oh, I lived in Wisconsin too, or whatever. Or I had a paper route too. And then he said, okay. He said, Sue, because it went so well, I asked, so where were you living and what were you doing when you were 20? And they did it again. And then they did it a third round. And he said, I'm not going to take over this. He was hijacking the hostess's party, really. But everybody enjoyed it so much. And he goes, he wouldn't do it any more than that. But that's the simple question. You start with something. When I teach on it, I say, you start with a surface level question like that one. Everybody can at least remember where they lived around that age and what they were doing. And we went on this cruise. It was an American River cruise, my husband and I, from Baltimore to Florida. And it was 15 days. And every mealtime, I would ask just one. And I called it my geriatric cruise because even though I was 70, everybody seemed a lot older to me. And these people loved to talk about themselves. And they felt so loved. And at the last day, the maitre d' came up to me and goes, okay, what's the question for And people wanted to sit there. Why? Because they felt loved. And one question was, one time I said to my brother, the same brother, that I had a big disappointment. And my brother said, Sue, you learn more from failure than from success. And so I did that preamble. I said, so what is something that you failed at and what did you learn? Oh my gosh. One woman told me later, because it was a second marriage for them, she said, I've never heard my husband talk about his divorce and how he was failed as a husband. And this is a table of 8 people.
It was strangers. Yes.
Strangers. After 15 days, you know each other. And also these people travel the world and they have a lot of money, obviously. And it was just such a beautiful way to connect. And then also when I have just Christians at the table, we ask more about things of the Lord. So I have sections on the book of God-type questions. I have a section in the book about teaching your children how to ask adult questions so that they know how to talk to adults. So I'm giving away a free resource for your listeners today. I handpicked 30 questions from the book, and it's in a printable. So you might have to ask your grandson how to print it out. But, and this is fun too. I'm sorry to talk so much about this, but it's just so much fun. My other brother is quite a talker, like worse than me. And I also sell a printable version, so it's $250, I think, a conversation starters. And he bought one. I go, Steve, why are you buying my conversation starters? You obviously don't need it. And he goes, because his wife's an extreme introvert, Aunt Karen. We love Karen. And he goes, we're having strangers for Thanksgiving. And she said she needed my help in the kitchen. And what are those people going to talk about? So he printed off just the ones he wanted. He cut them into strips. He folded them and put them in a basket. And then people picked out a question. It was so great. So I took his idea. I cut out strips of my own. And I put them under the plates when I had an Easter brunch because I had neighbors who don't go to church. And then Christians from church. And we were all mixed together at the various tables. And I said to them, if you don't like your question, you can give it to the person next to you. But everybody, would look under their plate and there was the question.
That is so cool. And you're right. Anybody can do that. I love that because people do love to talk about themselves. And when they do, they feel noticed. They feel heard. And that's something that many seasoned citizens don't. They feel isolated and lonely and alone, and nobody cares about me anymore. When they start talking about this kind of thing and what they did, they also realize they have more in common with other people than they have differences.
Oh, let me tell you what happened. One of the podcaster asked me recently to be on her podcast like you did so graciously. And she said she's not good at hospitality. So she's like confessing this to me, even though she's introducing me. And she goes, but I golf 3 times a week. She's a retired person in South Carolina. And she goes, so because I read your book, I invited my golf group, which is 9 women, for snacks this Friday afternoon. And I go, I said, tell me how it went. And she goes, so I'm going to ask your 2 questions I just used at a wine night. And the first question was, what book have you read more than once and why? Or movie, because some people don't read. And then the second question was, if someone would write a book about your life of the last 5 years, what would the title of the book be? Boy, when I did that in my group, that was so touching as well as funny. Some people were going, I won't do that again. That was the name of their book. But she told me, so later she wrote me, she goes, Sue, it was such a success, but we only got to the first question and people were cheering up about that. Like what book I read. I read more than once and why it touched their hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're all talking about, let's do it again. See how?
Absolutely. So you've written a bunch of books. People don't have to write a book in order to have an impact when they're over 50. But did this cost you anything? Did you have to put in a significant financial investment to?
I did them so many years apart. So I'm sure I don't make my husband finance my ministry. Because I'm a speaker, I get paid for speaking. And then that speaking has dried up a little bit. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to stop doing this because I'm a podcaster as well. Everything costs money. And then my Social Security went up when he turned 70. So praise the Lord, that covered my bills.
Yeah.
And so, and I plan to keep writing. As my one brother, he's a writer, and he said, Sue, writing lasts longer than speaking because people forget what you say. And they might say, oh, that was a good talk, but they don't necessarily remember it. But if they have a book they can refer to. It's hard for me, Greg, because I'd much rather talk than sit down at a computer. But God is telling me that this might be what my next 10 years will be, as long as I can think. Oh, and I want to tell you something too, just because of your topic is forward from 50. When I was 60, almost 63, and the reason I remember that is because I was at our fellowship group, our Bible study group, and we were sharing prayer requests. And one of the guys asked prayer for his mother, because he said she was beginning to show signs of dementia. And I had met his mom. She lived out of state. And I said, Dan, how old's your mom? And he said, she's 87. So maybe I was 66. Yeah, she's 87. And at the time I was 66. So, when you hear somebody, you start thinking in your brain, you're not even listening to anybody else anymore. Wake up if someone's doing that right now. I'm still talking. No. So in my mind, I started thinking, wow, I'm 66. It was January. My birthday's in May. In 5 months, I'm going to be 67. That means I only have 20 years left of cognitive viability where I could even have a complete sentence, or though that's beginning to fail, or be able to spell cognitive viability or know what it means or to pronounce it. And so right then I started inviting people over that I knew and loved, that I respected. And I just asked them, what legacy do you want to be known for when you die? And from that, then I started my podcast, which is Welcome Heart, Living a Legacy Life. And I always ask them, what legacy do you want to be known for those who know and love you? And people love talking about that because I go, and what are you doing about it right now? Don't wait until after you're dead. And people read nice things at your memorial service.
Exactly. This ties into another one of my passions is for people to tell their life story, to capture it so that other people can enjoy it as well. So if they don't want to write a book, they can sit down in front of a tape recorder or a digital recorder and share the lessons that they learned through life, and then just share them with other people. That talk about a legacy, and to hear that in their own words from your grandfather, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, and people don't think people don't want to hear it, but their great grandchildren might.
Right.
And if you've written it down, we read Dad had written one, but it was like 7 pages, so it wasn't very long, and he was 97 when he died. And I don't think I was mentioned in it. They read it at the funeral. I go, wait, I'm number 4 of kids. But I knew he loved me, but it was cute.
Oh, that's funny. If you could roll the clock back, is there anything you'd do differently?
I can't think of a thing other than I wish I would trust God more.
Awesome. That's good enough.
I gave up worry for Lent. Lent was over last week, and now I'm worrying again.
I love it. Do you have any advice for people over 50 who might be struggling with what to do to give their lives more meaning and purpose?
I think advice would be to ask a close friend what gifts they see in you. And then take those gifts as from God. Just like Biddy Chambers, her gift was shorthand. Your friend's gift was cooking for large amounts of food. And also keep in mind that your gifting can change.
Absolutely.
And be willing to say no to those things that you're not able to do anymore, or you shouldn't be doing at our age. And like, I'm closing down my podcast. I haven't told anybody yet, so I'll tell your end listeners. But I've been doing it 6 years, so I probably have about 6 more interviews. And it's been hard. I've been thinking, because I'm pretty good at it, and the people I have on my podcast are interesting, and I know God's glorified. But I think it might be time. And here I am admitting to you, but I think maybe by September, I'll be closing it up. I don't feel like it's a failure, though. Never feel like it's a failure because you're saying no to something. That could be God leading you as well. And there's no small gifts. Beautiful parable of the talents. God just talked this talents. You're giving small things or you're giving big things, but they all come to fruition if we do them.
That's right.
He gives us some responsibility. And there's a great book called Relentless Trust by Brennan Manning. And he tells a story about this man who would come visit this woman who was dying, basically. And every time he would come visit, she would say one more thing she was grateful for, but she hardly had anything left at the end. But she was just like, I get to see you, or I get to pray for you today. And that was her last gift, really. And yet we have so much more.
That's right.
So much. And so we can never trust God too much.
You're spot on by saying that our gifting can change, because sometimes those seeds are planted early in our life and they have to germinate through a whole bunch of trials and experiences and good and bad before they come to fruition. And at that point, they can be harvested. And sometimes the gifts that we had earlier are preparing us for the assignment that God has for us when we're older. So it all works together. If you sit back and look at where your life has been going and where it's headed and what you've done, it's all fits in like a puzzle in some regard, even if you can't see it. Your friends might be able to help you. You're right.
Your friends, right. And read my brother's books. My brother Hyatt is 82 and he paints every day. I get to go see him tomorrow night, Southern California. But when he was young, he was a bright, number one. But he also did really beautiful paintings of Easter egg dyeing. And he didn't like school, but he liked art. And he ended up being a graphic designer. He ended up working on the Cobra car. And then he worked for Surfer Magazine as a graphic designer, but he wasn't a Christian at the time. And then God got a hold of his life and he just gave himself to God. But he goes, I just don't want to be bored, because he was so talented. And then he ended up through 32 years with Wycliffe Bible Translators, and he became director, actually. But after that, he was going to Canada to work for their branch. And he just told his boss, if I could just do art and writing 2 days a week. And he goes, I wish all my employees would ask that. So he's now retired at 82, of course, but he paints every day and he goes abroad. He paints for people. And my sister started painting after she retired. There's so many things you can start.
Exactly. That is absolutely correct. So you said you had some free resources for Forward from 50 listeners. How can they get those?
I think I sent you the link, so they should be in your show notes. You have show notes,
yep,
Craig?
I do.
If not, I'll teach you how. I'm just kidding. And they're in your show notes, so you can or if you lose the show notes, you can email me at sue@welcomeheart.com. And so there are 30 conversation starters and then also relaxing recipes, because we can always need a new recipe.
Absolutely. That's great. And so we will link to those in the show notes as well. And
then you can find my books on Amazon under Sue Donaldson.
Okay. We'll link to them too, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so sweet.
Are you active on social media?
Yeah, Instagram. I include my maiden name because I was so old when I finally got married, 30. It's at Sue Moore Donaldson, Moore. And then Facebook is Sue Donaldson, I guess. I don't really know. And then my Facebook group is, I think I listed that for you, is Welcome Home. And so anyway, yeah, come connect. We'll share recipes.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. I think it's inspiring because it shows that anybody can do this kind of stuff to give their life more meaning and purpose. And in doing that, they will have impact beyond what they ever imagined they could.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sue Donaldson is a great example of what it looks like to keep growing, giving, and serving well beyond 50. What gives Sue meaning and purpose today is helping people experience God's welcoming heart through simple acts of hospitality. Whether she's hosting a dinner, asking thoughtful questions around a table, or writing books that encourage connection, her focus is on making sure no one feels alone. What's especially powerful is that Sue didn't wait for perfect conditions or until she had a big platform to start. She simply used the gifts she had, opened her home, and trusted that those small acts would make a big difference. If you'd like to learn more about Sue, you can find her books on Amazon. You can also connect with her on Instagram and Facebook. If you're interested in using her conversation starters or recipes, be sure to check out her website at www.welcomeheart.com. If this episode encouraged you, please take a moment to think about one simple step you could take this week. Maybe it's inviting someone over for coffee, asking a better question, or reaching out to someone who might be feeling alone. Sometimes the smallest invitation can lead to the biggest impact. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thank you for listening. If you like this show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.